Welcome to the Living Well podcast, presented by Elim Christian Centre. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and we are going to discuss some topics that are important to us as we face challenges in daily life. So today's episode, we're talking about parenting. We're talking about navigating that new season of parenthood. My name's Liz Griffiths. I am a pastor, counsellor, mum of four now 20-something-year-olds, and I'm joined by Anna Faulkner, who has been a personal trainer in years gone by, is a ministry leader in our Papakura Campus, and is a mother of two with another one on the way. Very exciting. And then we've got Becs Green. Becs is a lead pastor at our Botany campus and a writer, and a mother of two boys. So, Anna, tell us a little bit about the work that you do.
The work that I do. So I was previously a creative director in an advertising agency. It was the beginning of my working journey. And then I got into personal training as I got bored. I get bored quite quickly. And so I moved into personal training on the side, did some group fitness, women's group fitness, which I loved, and kept going basically until I couldn't fit that in with my two girls. So I've got Finley, who's 4, and Zadie is 2. And little one on the way due in December, which will make it busy, me and my husband Paul. So we have the privilege of currently raising 2 beautiful girls, and we'll see what number 3 will be in December.
You're going to wait. You're going to wait to see.
Yeah, we love the surprise.
That's awesome. Becs, tell us a little bit about what you do and your family.
So me and my husband Steve have been in ministry for, I think, somewhere between 15 and 20 years. I'm a trained teacher. So I taught for 4 years before moving into pastoral ministry. We started off as youth pastors. And for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been leading our Botany campus as Steve has stepped into the senior pastor role. So he looks at much bigger picture stuff, and I look after our Botany team. And I have 2 boys. So my oldest Judah is 14. And so we are just in the beginning stages of the teenage years. And then Rocky is 11, and they're awesome. And we have 2 dogs as well, Maya and Chewy.
Yes.
Who are very dramatic and big.
The one-eyed Chewy.
One-eyed Chewy, Captain Chewy.
Captain Chewy.
And the most expensive rescue dog, Maya.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, good. So help, team. We had kids. Oh, my goodness. Nobody told us it was going to be like this, did they?
Or did they?
Or did they? Maybe
everyone tried, I think. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. I think that we should be able to put on our CVs that we both gave birth and then that we are doing this parenting gig, because, you know, it's harder than you think, right?
And I don't think you think about after a baby. I think you think, I'm going to have a baby. And then they become bigger, and then you have a small person, and you're like, wow, I didn't really consider beyond 2. And then all of a sudden now I have a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah. And you have the baby, and then you have another one, and then you're going to have another one.
Yeah, we'll see what that looks like when we get to that stage.
Yeah.
I've heard the jump between 2 and 3 is easier than the jump between 1 and 2.
Well, I found the jump between 1 and 2 much easier than 0 to 1.
Did you?
Yes. Interesting. Yeah, found varying opinions on this, but for us,
so I guess if you've got 1, then you can both take turns. If you've got 2, then you've got 1 each, or 1 hand for each.
Yeah.
What are you going to do when you've got 3, Anna?
They'll just have to be in a front pack.
You're going to have a terrorist. You're going to have like a runaway. You're going to have.
You could have 1 on the front and 1 on the back.
Yeah.
We had 3 of our own children, and then we had a niece that came to live with us when our youngest was 3, and then at the same time we had like another niece and nephew that came to us at the same time. So at one point we had 5, and I always thought we'd have like 2 kids or maybe 3 at the most, and then at one point we had 5. It was absolute chaos. I felt like I just lived in chaos the whole time, and I got through, and I loved looking back the season, but man, it was a thing. It was a thing. Yeah.
Crazy.
But it's going to be great, Anna. 3. Yep. It's going to be, you're going to do it. It's going
my favourite number.
For the job.
Thank you. Thank
you.
Okay. My husband's a great husband too. I couldn't do without him.
Yeah, that's
Need the
good.
teamwork.
Yeah, teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, so if we just talk just for a few minutes about stages of child development. So we know that in those first 5 years of a child's life, it's a really important time. It's real shaping the experience that a child has in those first few years will shape they will remember, or they are shaped very much by what happens in those first 5 years throughout their entire life. They'll feel the impact of their early childhood experiences throughout their life. So it's a really important time, and the child's brain develops more rapidly during that time than any other time in life. We were having a little bit of a conversation the other day, and we were talking about those sort of stages, like the newborn stage, the toddler stage, that now they're going to school age, and we were kind of having a bit of a laugh about what it's like in those times. So what was it like new baby, like Becs, what was that like for you?
I loved having a new baby because it's the only time when you have the best excuse to have dinners cooked for you, your house, I just feel like that is, the major excuse. I'm sorry, I've just had a baby. I can't. It's the ultimate no, isn't it, for everything that you do not want to do. And I loved it. I loved the first 6 weeks of both of my boys. They were probably my favourite times with them. And then I went back to work pretty quickly with both of mine. I think I was running a women's conference with Judah when he was 3 months old. Oh, I remember sitting up at night when he was, awake at 2 a.m. and having him feeding and answering emails at the same time and doing work in the middle of the night with him. And then Rocky was worse. Rocky was 6 weeks old when I ran Replenish Women's Conference that year in 2015. So I think part of I really loved that newborn stage, but it was busy. I think I was just a bit, I don't know, call me crazy. I don't know.
So you slept through that time? You got some sleep?
Yeah, I got some sleep. Yeah. My kids are both terrible, terrible sleepers. So with the first, I would do night feeds normally, and I was pretty routine, and so we did all right. Judah was a terrible sleeper. Rocky was worse, but by that stage I was just so exhausted. I just put him in bed with me, and we just co-slept a lot, which I don't know, lots of different opinions about that, but that's how we did it. Yeah. And I just kept telling myself, he is not going to be 18 and still climbing into bed with me. And that is what I told myself. And now he's 11 and he doesn't climb into bed with me anymore, and I miss it. I miss having him crawl into my bed. Yeah. Because I actually, you do miss those seasons.
Yeah. What about for you, Anna? What were those early newborn?
Yeah, we went into the first level 4 lockdown 2 weeks before I gave birth. So we ended up having Finley at home unexpectedly. And so I learned how to feed on FaceTime and did a lot of that journey sort of on my own. We had a midwife. She came and, after birth, she left a few hours later, and Paul and I were sitting there with this baby in our room, like, what do we do?
Totally.
And we hadn't really had many friends have children or anything, so it was all very, very new to us.
Because when a midwife is helping you feed, she's like right in there, right? She's like really showing you how to do this thing. Oh.
Yeah, and so some of that was tricky. And so I think in hindsight, I probably I'm quite a positive person, so I just used my natural positivity to get me through rather than really being in a really great place in that season, because I kind of had times every day where I was like, who am I? What is happening? Not that I was necessarily in a really bad state the whole time, but just each day having a moment of what has just happened? Oh my goodness, and not having that same support because of COVID and everything. So I found the second time, though, with Zadie, I loved newborn. The first time, not so much. I think the second time you've kind of gone through all the identity change and you've gotten used to that, and you don't worry as much, you're not comparing as much, you kind of know what works for you and your family. And so I loved it the second time, didn't love it the first time.
Yeah. I had a bit of an interesting time. I think after having my first, I had quite a difficult birth, and then I don't know, I was pretty kind of confident person prior to having babies, and then had this new baby and just got totally I have no idea what I'm doing, and I struggled with breastfeeding, and there was a bit of a stigma around bottle feeding at the time. This is going back a lot of years, and so I kind of felt like I was quite back foot with my first, and it was quite a challenging time, and really felt like I needed lots of encouragement from Mike, and he was great. He would sort of encourage me and tell me I'm doing a great job and stuff like that. But it was pretty tricky. So I guess the thing is that everybody's different, right? Everyone's experience, and you're talking about you had a little bit of time every day where you just feel a bit like, oh, flip me, what have I done? This is like, how do I do this? Whereas for me it was a bit of like a bit of a constant sense of like, I don't know how to be a mother. But somewhere along the way I think I might have figured it out, and I just kept having them. It's 3. And then other people's beautiful little people, and we did that, my sister's kids, for a while. And what about the toddler stage and then the going to school stage? What was that like for you guys? Like, did you...
I think for me, because as I said, I worked a lot with the way through. So I just tried to, because, lots of people tell you there's that whole thing about, enjoy every stage. It goes so quickly, and they all say that, and you just roll your eyes at them and go, whatever. You're not actually living in this right now, But I tried to take that on board as much as I could, because I look back now, I'm so thankful for all the videos of my boys when they were little, because they were just so jolly cute, but I do miss it. I miss them being that little, and so I did try and enjoy it, but it was hard for me in that stage not to wish the next stage to come along, and like, I just can't wait till they get to school, and I just can't wait, because
it's quite an exhausting time, right?
It is,
they're kind of talking, maybe a little bit, and walking. What are they doing, Anna? I forgot. What are they doing?
Everything.
Yeah.
I actually just had a weekend away with Finley, my eldest, because Zadie, our second, she's just turned 2, and she is full noise. She is nonstop, wants to help me with everything, wants to be in everything, wants to be outside in the rain whenever it's raining. She is full on, but so fun at the same time. So I found definitely this time, pregnancy-wise, I am tired a lot of the time. But I also really enjoy, you were just talking about they won't climb into bed with you, forever. And we actually read and sit with our girls till they're asleep. So we read with them, we sit with them, we pray with them, and we're in with them. And that's not what everyone wants to do. And sometimes it's not what I want to do, but it's what we're doing. And 9 times out of 10 we love it. And it's just realizing and knowing that they won't want us to read them stories forever. And so we're just sort of making the most of this season, realizing, even Finley being 4 now, I'm like, how did she go from 2 to 4? Where did that time go? And so being able to go away with her for a weekend and spend time with her as a 4-year-old, where I don't have my busy 2-year-old sort of taking the attention the whole time. So trying to, do what I can to be with both of them in the season that they're in, where I can. So it's full on, but it's fun at the same time.
Lovely, and it's like you've got these little rituals that you do at night, maybe reading, maybe praying, and then I guess we're trying to cultivate that in them, right? So that then when they are a little bit older, they're going to choose that for themselves to read, to calm down at night, or just to kind of, grow and learn. And
I think what you said as well about looking at what other people are doing and going, well, that's not for everybody. Like, I really struggled with that at that stage when they were toddlers, and because everyone's looking at what you're doing, and there's so much, nowadays it's even worse because it's all on Instagram. Instagram wasn't a huge thing when I had littlies, but there was always someone telling you, you shouldn't be having them up at night, and you need to let them cry it out, and you need to do this and you need to do that. And so the whole time you're questioning. And I think what I've realised now with my children 11 and 14 is that there is no right way to do this. There is no way that is the right way, or that's by the book. There's no such thing as by the book with kids. You've got to do what's right for your family. What you're choosing to do is your decision. It's not what, I love that you said that. It's not what everyone wants to do, but it's what we want to do. And so this is how we're going to do it, because there's so many people who come and, they've got opinions about feeding and whether you should feed them with solids that are ground up, or what is it called, child-led feeding and baby-led weaning. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. There's so many things these days. And, you are the one that's got to survive with this child.
One of my favourite quotes is, comparison is the thief of joy.
Totally.
And just that in that season you can so easily lose your joy just by comparing. And one thing I did actually early on during COVID was I fully curated my Instagram feed.
Great.
So I even muted some friends that I found myself comparing with if they had babies similar age or they did things differently. And, I made sure I wasn't just bringing in everything that agreed with what we decided to do, but just encouraging voices, like some of, Brooke Lidgetwood and some of those ones that are they just post a lot of good stuff and encouraging stuff and always remind me to fix my eyes on Jesus in the season. And so I just fully curated that, and it's changed over time. But I love Instagram now because of that. It's my uplifting space.
That's lovely. So you've curated it to be something that's actually edifying and helpful for you in whatever season you've sort of found yourself in. And so the comparison thing, because it's kind of like kids. I remember with my kids, it was like they walked a little bit later than everybody else's. And I can remember thinking, oh my goodness, like, what are people thinking? And, but actually, they got there eventually and they're doing a good job these days. So
Totally.
I think that, you worry about these things. Walking and talking. Yeah. So, I think that not comparing, just kind of doing your own journey and getting your kids through, getting yourself through. Yeah. Let's just talk for a little bit about postnatal depression or postpartum depression we talk about. What's normal, what's not normal. Anna, you were talking before about you'd have this little time in the day where you'd just be like, I can't do this, or it was just a little bit every day. Is that what you experienced?
Yeah. Yep. There wasn't really necessarily a time of day or anything either. It was just sort of a moment every day where I'd realise, I guess, that things were not what they were, and that it had suddenly changed so drastically. And we were obviously in that lockdown season as well, so things changed so dramatically. And exactly that comparison, trying to figure out at that early stage, people would say, you need to put them in the bassinet, and I'll be like, well, my baby only sleeps on me. Am I now a bad mum? Am I doing this wrong? And all that sort of stuff. So it was all of those sort of figuring it out, identity.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily say I suffered from postnatal depression or anything, but you'd
have this little daily moment, which has got to be really common amongst mums, right? And then other mums will experience like baby blues, right? Super common. Yep. After you've had the baby, it's like this. It's a hormonal thing. It usually it might last for a week. It might come a week or two after you've had the baby. It's not depression. It might be irritability. It might be nervousness. It might be not sleeping. It might be some sort of emotional reactivity, but it's a really normal part, and it might last a bit of a week. But then some women might find themselves in a little bit more where it's an ongoing thing. Beck, did you have anything like that for you?
No, I didn't really suffer from any postnatal depression or anything like that. I think definitely what every woman faces, which can be feeling really overwhelming, and because you don't know what it is your whole body being totally out of whack, mentally, emotionally, physically, and hormonally. You have just got this. It's like what's just happened to you in terms of the pregnancy and childbirthing deal is so dramatic. And I think we play it down because it's so normal and it's so natural. But there is so much going on with your body and your emotions and your hormones that is just so wild that we do. You go through stages where you just want to cry all day, and then you want to be, you're frustrated, or you just don't know what to do, or you're so sleep deprived that it's just everything is just not functioning normally. And then what happens is we start to question, am I a good mum? Why am I feeling so annoyed at my baby, my beautiful baby that I love with all my heart? Why am I getting frustrated that he won't sleep? And all of those types of feelings, and because it doesn't seem reasonable, some of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it, I'm crying for no reason. Why am I crying for no reason? Like, what is going on here? And so often I think we, before you have kids, or even once your kids are a bit settled and you've got your head around it, you can kind of reason things and, oh, I just didn't get a good sleep, so, I'm okay. Well, I just need to have some more water today, or I just, we often can explain away things. When you're in that state of, I've just had this baby, my body has just gone through this enormous thing, my emotions and my hormones are up the wazoo, I can't explain any of this. This is making absolutely no sense to me. Sometimes I just say to Steve, even now, maybe the other end, I'm like past 40 now, I'm like, I'm just crazy today, all right? Like, it's just what it is. Okay, and you're just going to have to deal with it. But I think that's, I think that's probably
just normalising it, that actually this is the experience, and it just is what it is. Yeah. They say about 1 in 10 women have postnatal depression. I think looking back with my first child, with Ellie, I think I probably did have postnatal depression. I struggled with feeding. I had quite a difficult birth, and a lot of anxiousness in those first, probably I think about 6 months. And I think that at the time I didn't know, and it certainly wasn't diagnosed, and I kind of muddled my way through it. But I think looking back, that probably it was there, and I think that. Sort of at a low level, you can you manage it, and it's a bit hard. But I think that for some women, they have a more sort of it's more difficult, more intense for them. And I think when that sort of thing happens, then it is about going to your GP. It is about telling someone I'm not coping. And when you really are finding yourself in quite a distressed place, or you know, really are concerned about, you know, safety of yourself or your baby, then to actually get to your GP is actually really important to get the help you need.
And I think that's the key, It's working out there is a bunch of stuff that's really normal.
Yeah.
And so don't feel like you are crazy when it's actually really normal.
Yeah.
But then it's that, but what's not? What's going past the point where this is, I don't know whether normal is the right word, but where I actually need to get some help with some of the stuff that I'm feeling, some of these things. And I think in that scenario, and I know that this can be hard for women with childbirth, because one of the things that comes along with having a child is often isolation, because your whole way of your routines change. If you were full-time at work and your community was around your work colleagues, and all of a sudden you're not working anymore, that changes. And then church changes. It's hard to get to church when you've got a newborn and their routines are all out and you can't get out the door, and then they do an explosion in the car on the way, so you just turn around and go back home again, you know, like all of those things. I remember missing entire services because my brain was so foggy. I just turned up at the end of the service instead of the beginning of the service, and I was emceeing. And I
actually happened.
Right. Yes, it actually happened.
My goodness.
And you know what? It was Christmas Day.
Oh,
I missed the entire service. And so I stood on the door and everyone just thought I was there the whole time.
Oh, that's so funny. You were supposed to, and so Steve just
had
emceed the
to
service.
MC and preach the whole service. But my brain I was just exhausted, and I didn't know. I looked at the clock and it was just all foggy, so I don't know. But
that's teamwork though.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's all crazy. And so isolation is a real thing. But I think one of the keys to the mental health space for new mums, parents, is actually the community that they find themselves in, because then you can have those conversations and you can, you know, hopefully you find a safe space where you can go, is that normal? Are you feeling this too? Or someone can go, hey, you know, I'd love to get alongside you. I think that's really important. And whether that's a community that you've been able to naturally develop, whether it's a coffee group or church group or whatever, or friend group in the same space and stage as you, or whether that's actually I need to push this and fight for this myself, and I need to go somewhere to get some help so that I have someone I can talk to. But it's the talking through and talking to. I think that's really, really, really important.
There's so much power in me too. You know, like when you say something and you think, oh my goodness, should I share this? Someone else says, oh my goodness, me too.
Totally.
And then you've got this bond and you
Absolutely.
you don't feel so alone in it anymore. And I had a friend recently who went through really terrible postnatal depression, and she was one you just never expect it. She's so positive. She exercises, she sleeps well, she eats well, she does all the right things. But she found herself in this season of horrendous postnatal depression, and she asked me sort of for some advice, and I couldn't do the me too, but I said I know someone that can. And so I passed it on to someone that had been through it as well, and that was a game changer for her, because just talking to someone that kind of gave her the, yes, it's okay to do that, or no, you know, like that's probably not a good idea, yes, go see a GP, or, you know, facing the, should I take medication, should I not, and what does that look like for us and our family, and all those questions, like someone else was able to answer them for her, a safe person. But the power of me too being huge in that season.
And that actually somebody can be doing all the right things, but it just kind of happens, and that's actually okay. And
totally.
but, you know, to get the help that you need, that's cool. So then let's just talk a little bit about making peace with the seasons that you're in, and you guys have done it a little bit differently, right? One of you's been more at home, one of you's been more at work, or that. So just talk a little bit about that. I can just remember people always used to say to me, you know, enjoy the season that you're in. It's going to go so fast. It's going to be like, you know, you're going to be into the next season. And I can remember getting so cross at people. It's like, you have no idea how hard this is for me. And I used to get really annoyed at them because I would always, and I was wishing the next season to come. I wanted to be in the next stage. I wanted to go from newborn to toddler. I wanted my kids at school. And I would kind of wish away the seasons and not really embrace and enjoy the season that I was in. Now, all these years later, I look back and go, oh, I wish I'd enjoyed the season that I was in more, what all those people told me. But actually at the time I didn't want to hear it. So what are your thoughts on seasons and embracing the season that you're in?
I remember when I went on maternity leave. So I was working in ministry. We were the youth pastors, and two of the things that I looked after was the intermediate program and our small groups for youth. And we had an intern with us who'd been working with us for a few years, and so she was kind of ready to take on stuff. And I knew that in having baby, my oldest, I was stepping out of youth and I was stepping out completely. So even if I came back after maternity, I wasn't coming back into that space. And so I handed everything over to her. And then I remember afterwards, and I'm not sure if this is before I'd even had him, but just being on maternity leave, watching her and going, oh no, she's doing a really good job. And I just had that whole feeling of, they don't need me anymore. People don't need me anymore. And I was worried about being forgotten. I was worried about just being left at home with nappies and a crying baby, and that, because that wasn't my deal. Like I've never said, now that I'm 40 and my children are nearly both at high school, I am now saying I would love to be on maternity leave, but I didn't want to be away. You know, like can I be a stay? I remember saying to Steve, just like literally not that long ago, going, is it too late to become a stay-at-home mum? But when I had my two, I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mum. I felt differently. I felt our family we did it differently. I wanted to do it differently, and so I wanted to have that workspace available to me, and I wanted to do that. And so for me, looking on and having to acknowledge that actually my baby is so tiny, I have to stay home. Was really hard for me because it was the whole feeling of I don't want to feel forgotten. I don't want to be left behind. I don't want everyone to move on and go, oh, we don't need her anymore. You know, we're doing so great without her. We don't need her. And I think one thing that I had to learn for that, and I think about the scripture in Ecclesiastes where it says there's a time for everything. So there's a time to do this and there's a time to do that. And what I had to learn, and I think I've only sort of learnt it in the last sort of, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years, was that even if it's not happening now, there'll be a time for it. And so I don't have to worry about it running off. There's not a train running off at top speed and I'm chasing behind it. Like I'll get on at the stop I need to get on and I'll jump on the train. And it's not going to go without me. And, you know, no one's going to leave me behind. It's God's timing and his plan and his season for me. And so it's being able to read and recognize those seasons and trust it. I'm not going to get left behind. I'm not going to not grow into who God needs me to be. And I think I realized that, you know, because, you know, there's lots of different opportunities in ministry that, you know, you hope for. And I remember sitting on a plane on the way to New York to get the opportunity I'd prayed for and wanted. And I remember panicking, going, I do not want this. I'm not ready for this. And it made me go, I almost felt like God was like, see, my timing, you know, my timing is perfect. And I realized at that moment that nothing was going to run off and leave me behind to change nappies forever. You know, it was just going to be that my stop was at the time that was perfectly designed for us. And I was going to jump back on the train when the, you know, when it was a good time for me and my children. And now, and the season's changed again now. Now the boys are older and they don't need me. It's not so physically draining, like I'm not running after this toddler, but I feel like they need me more. And so we're talking now as a family about me not doing as much travel. You know, like Steve will do the travel, I'll stay at home and focus on the boys because they just need me around a bit more. And so seasons change, and they change with toddlers, and then they change as they get to primary school, and then they change when they become teenagers, and it'll change again.
And then they start leaving home.
And what do you do then?
I know. Well, hopefully then you've put time into your marriage and you've got something, you know, where you can, you know, get time with your husband again, and because sometimes through those seasons, it's all about about the kids, and we'll come to that in a minute. Anna, seasons for you?
So we decided that we would try to not do daycare if we didn't need to. So both Paul and I had our mums at home growing up, and we really appreciated that as kids. And I think talking about it was easy. Doing it was not as easy. Not that I wanted to necessarily put the girls in daycare, but that being home all the time was really hard, especially when I'm quite social and I'm a real doer. And so learning to go slow was really hard, and trying to go at the pace of the girls. Also because it was lockdown at the time, as I've said, so it was very slow, and trying to entertain, you know, a young one for you know, all the time. And then there was that pressure to have all these ideas. If you're a stay-at-home, you must have so many great ideas of how to entertain your children, you know, where they don't, and just there's no screens, and, you know, we tried our best to do that for as long as we could. And I remember actually one time my husband's Oma, she's like 95, and she said, we didn't have screens in our day. And I was almost, really on the defensive. And then she's like, I would have used it all the time. It was just this, like, this freedom of like, sometimes it does what I need it to do, and just coming to peace with whatever that looks like. But so I've gone back to work. I've had maternity leave, and then I've gone back after 6 months, just 10 hours. So I've done 10 hours or been at home. And so we've just sort of juggled what that looks like as we go. And so my husband Paul, he worked from home a lot during COVID, and now he works 2 days from home. So I'm really lucky that we're able to sort of make it work together, and we sort of adapt with each.
You're
each
sort of
season.
adapting as you go.
Yeah.
Just doing the journey. Yeah.
And at the moment we're lucky to have sort of my mum help out a bit, and my mum's friend on those 10 hours that I'm working. So it's the juggle is hard, and the mental load of trying to figure things out. And if something changes in my week, if I've got an extra meeting somewhere or whatever, it's kind of okay. Come together, talk together, how do we make this work together? And so, I couldn't do what I do without him, without Paul being so supportive of it and juggling with me. But I've come to peace with being at home a lot more. Like, I enjoy it a lot more now. I'm actually really thankful for it, doing things like going to playgroups. So I go to Clevedon Playgroup Mondays and Fridays, and most Mondays and Fridays, and we love it. And it's a safe space. I get to sort of chill out, and the girls have fun. They always have fresh baking, which is just the best part. And there's some ladies there that, one lady that's in the kitchen, and I love going and just talking to her because she's full of wisdom. She's in her 60s, an amazing Christian lady who I just love talking to. So there's that filling of just gaining wisdom and being able to talk through, like, oh my goodness, what school are we going to send Finley to? And just hearing her experience of having 5 children. So this season I'm finding right now, I love it. I really love it. And I love the balance that I have, as long as I keep the balance.
Yes. Totally.
When I start saying yes to too much with work or, whatever, then it can get a little bit out of kilter. But And
I just want to take just a minute to acknowledge mums that are actually doing their journey on their own without a husband. I hear what you're saying about Paul, and it's just such a blessing. And there's mums out there that are doing it by themselves. And I just think then it's like what you were saying before about community, Becs, the importance of that, the 60-year-olds, in the kitchen and finding those ladies, having those conversations and finding what you need. And I guess you've got to be, you've got to be kind of really try and find that community to do the journey. But man, hats off to girls that are doing this on their own. And I guess maybe even some dads are doing that at times on their own as well. And I think thinking about the seasons, I think there's sort of sacrifice whichever way you play it, like if you make the call to be at home with your kids because that's an important value, then there's a financial sacrifice, or there's a kind of career advancement sacrifice. I think if you choose to be at work, there can be a sacrifice in terms of time with your kids. And so you do have to get kind of clever. You do have to kind of figure it out. But I guess the thing is, you got to back yourself, right? You got to decide what's right for us, what's right for our family, what's our rhythm, how we're going to do it, and then you got to back yourself, because the girl up the road will be doing it different, and she'll have her reasons for doing it different. Exactly. But you just got to back yourself, hey?
Totally, because there's the whole. I think this parenting is probably the one area where I would say, from what I've experienced, we judge ourselves and each other the most, because we all do it so differently. Our children are different. They've got different personalities, different needs, We're different. We have different personalities, different needs. All of our situations and circumstances are different. Our family backgrounds are different. So how we were raised were different, and so we're just all trying to muddle this along, and yet there is no book that we can do this by apart from the Word, the Bible. And even then it doesn't always speak specifically about certain situations, And so it's, it's that, it's that whole feeling of, I found with the school years, like going to pick the boys up, I always used to get so frustrated because I'd turn up, I could never get to school on time to pick my kid up because I was having meetings trying to get out of class, and all the mums who didn't have, I just assumed that they were all the mums that didn't work, were sitting outside school at 2:30 in the really close parks who could get there and be outside the kids' classroom right on the bell. And I'm like screeching
cool and calm and collected.
Yeah, and I'm screeching in at 3:05 because I've had to get out of a work meeting that took longer than I thought it did. And then my kid is crying outside the classroom because I didn't make it there in time. And it's hard whatever way you play it. It's hard, and you do have to be
Yeah,
super
just
confident
decide what's important
in your decisions.
Just everyone, and realising for everyone else, everyone is doing the best
Yes.
with what they know, with the information they've got, with the support that they've got,
Yes.
and just having grace for everyone in their situation. And you realise
And for
how
yourself.
Yes, for yourself. You realise how often you said previously, I would never do that. I wouldn't do that.
Totally.
And then you realise you're doing all those things. At
Also,
some point.
Also the things that you realise about your own upbringing that you now do the opposite of, or, like I used to look when I was a kid, I remember looking at the sandwiches of my friends at school and they had the crust cut off. And I thought to myself, those are great sandwiches. Their mummy must have taken so much time and care making their sandwiches. And my mum studied and went back to study as an adult and then worked full time. So from the age of like 5 or 6, I was making my own lunch. But now as a parent, do I make my kids make their own lunch? No, I make their lunch and I cut off the crust of the sandwiches because if I don't, they don't, then their mummy doesn't love them. Like there's so many things that play into your mind as a parent. It's just, it's complex.
For us, it was afternoon tea. And actually, interestingly, it wasn't me, it was Mike. He was like, he had this thing that when the kids come home from school, there needs to be their afternoon tea on the bench, all laid out, just looking beautiful for them. And, man, I used to buck against that. But anyway, eventually I got good at doing that because I did my own afternoon tea when I was growing up. And but no, they would always have nice little afternoon tea on individual plates when they came home, and I think they really appreciated it. Anyway, it's funny the things we bring from our own childhood.
Totally, and I think that's why talking about stuff great to be able to talk with a group of friends, but also really great. I think everyone needs counselling at some point because there is stuff from your past.
Yeah,
something as simple as they must have morning tea or their crust must be cut off their sandwiches, that you just is actually that's stuff, and that's stuff that's worth talking about. And where did that come from? And how's that playing into your parenting now? And all those types of things.
I think so. I think that family of origin stuff that has happened in your childhood, even more difficult things, or where there's been like a lack or a deficit, or been some traumatic things happening. Sometimes when you find yourself a parent, you might find some of those things turning up, or you might find yourself being triggered or feeling a particular way, and you can't quite figure out. So I guess that's when counselling can be really helpful to understand what is it of those past experiences that is impacting in the day-to-day in a not okay way, and then to kind of get the help and support you need for that. And that's where counselling can be really helpful, as well as, like we were talking about postnatal depression before, it can be another thing. It can be really, really helpful. Talk therapy can be really, really helpful. I just want to come back to, when you think about this parenting gig, we do that, but like we've got often, usually most of the time, have been married first, and then we have these kids. So how do you keep your marriage together when you're doing this crazy parenting gig? So what are your kind of tips?
Yeah, one for us when on the early, when we were early parents, was walk talks or talk walks. So we'd go for walks to talk, because sitting across from each other or can feel a bit intimidating, and when do you really get to do that? And then in bed it's like, don't start something before you're going to go to sleep. And so we'd go for walks in the day, and that's where we would sort of nut things out, because you're not having to face each other, you're just walking next to each other. And so we did a lot of talking through walks to figure out things, and that was really helpful for us at that early stage.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, what about you, Bea?
I think it is about prioritising each other, prioritising time together, prioritising whether it's a date night. And look, sometimes that's not what you envisage a date night to be, it's not the date nights of old where you'd be able to go out for dinner or whatever. Like I think we probably had a good, especially because when we lived in Whangarei, we had no parental support. So it was just us at home with our boys. So you can't get a babysitter every single week, and gosh, that gets jolly expensive, doesn't it? So there's finances as well. And so I'd Google at-home date nights, and you have all these ideas. One year we went through the alphabet and we had to plan a night for each other from the letter of the alphabet that we were on that week. And so you kind of have to get creative. And so it's about prioritising, really. As we've gotten a little bit older, with our kids a little bit older, so probably about 8 years ago, we got a spa pool, which is awesome, because it's at the end of the day, it's just, you can sit in the spa and just chat about what's happening. It's like our talk time. There's no devices. Like I said to Steve the other day, I think I like the spa because you can't pick up your You can't pick up your phone and get distracted by a reel when I'm talking to you about something really important.
Yeah.
So I think just actually it's about being deliberate. It's about prioritizing each other, prioritizing time, prioritizing intimacy, all of those types of things, which can so easily, because you're so exhausted and you're so tired. And often, we sort of, yes, our children are, of course, they're so important. But one day you're in the stage where your kids leave and all of a sudden it's just the two of you again.
Yeah.
And I never want to get to the stage where I look at my husband and go, hi, my name's Becs. Are we meeting for the first time again?
Oh, I love it.
And that we are their example, right? And so for them to feel
you're
safe
role modeling for your
yes,
kids.
exactly. And I think that's been really important to us. I'm like, what do they want? What do I want them to see a marriage looks like?
Yes.
What do I want them to hear about their dad when he's not around? And so, and I'm constantly
So
like,
important.
oh, your dad is the best dad in the whole world, so that they know that I think that of him, but that I love him as well. And so that's been really key for us. And I also found that for a long time, it took me a long time to stop going to like my mum or my friends, where I should be going to Paul. And so I found since I've prioritizing his opinion on things and prioritizing talking about the decisions we've made as a family, because no one else knows, why we've made the decisions like we do. We've made them together. So going to him when I'm struggling, or for him to remind me of why we've made a decision. And so that's been really key for us. And even when we, first became parents, I got this piece of advice that I fully underrated at the time. It was be kind to each other.
I was going to say the same thing.
It's the best advice.
It is.
But it was to Paul and I remember thinking, yeah, okay, great. But since that time, I've realised how important that is. Be kind to each other. When you haven't slept, be kind to each other. When you're trying to juggle things and your mind's going crazy and you're overwhelmed or whatever, be kind to each other, realising that you two are in it together. No one else, is in your marriage. It's the two of you.
Yeah, that's really lovely.
Yeah. Add to that.
Yeah, I do, because I remember a season we were away, we were overseas and we were on a big long drive, and we were both really grumpy at each other, just being irritable. It was irritable, I think was a good way of putting it. And in the end, we ended up with this massive discussion in the car, and the bottom line was we had stopped being kind, and that was the solution. Really, was just that we actually just needed to be kind, because we are partners in this thing. It's not us against the world, but it's us against the world. It's us against these two growing boys.
Yeah. We want to be allies, not enemies.
Allies, not enemies. And just to be kind to each other is just so simple, and yet it's just
There's a relationship expert called John Gottman, and he talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And what he's talking about is you got to make sure that you don't do things in your relationship. And he talks about defensiveness. He talks about stonewalling. He talks about contempt and criticism. He says you don't look to see that the other person's not doing that, but you're actually putting the mirror on yourself and saying, am I being defensive? Am I being, am I stonewalling the other person? Am I showing contempt? Am I criticising what they do? And even in front of the kids, like, am I criticising what dad's doing? Or, just making sure, let me not have any of that in me, because that is going to totally affect and knock at that foundation. And we need that foundation of marriage to be able to do great parenting, I think.
Totally. I think it's so worth the investment. So even if it is going to cost you a little bit of money, I think you have to keep investing into your marriage. It is one of the best things that you can invest into. And the risk we have as parents is that we spend so much time focusing on our children because they're our children.
Yeah.
And the right thing to do is to give them the best and to be always there, but actually you were married first, and you're going to be married at the end. You want to be married at the end of it, and so I think the investment into it. I think going, like marriage counselling, and that doesn't mean to say that the marriage is bad. It's just I need to go and get check-ins, and we're just checking in with each other and getting that advice and getting that help.
And then you've got alpha marriage, or you've got courses that churches
the
are
weekend
doing.
to remember that in life do. So worth
I
it.
reckon like a daily connecting in some way, whether it's emotionally or physically, it's important. I think once a week, if it's a home date or if it's an out date, or but it's something that's just the two of you. And then these things like weekend like marriage retreats, or like getting away for a weekend if you've got maybe a mother-in-law or mum that can look after the kids, but actually investing in that stuff's really important.
I think one thing, if I could say one last thing about this whole marriage area, I think as well, one of the things I've realised later, probably too late, but is it's really easy, and the risk is it's so easy to do, is that we don't leave anything left at the end of the day for our spouse.
Yeah.
Because you've given everything to everybody else. And that's such a common thing. We feel, I've just given and I've given and I've given, especially as women. I've just given and I've given. I've done everything for anyone. I don't even touch me. I don't want to give out anymore. But actually, probably one of our priorities could be that we are making sure that at the end of the day we're leaving something.
A little bit in the tank.
A little bit in the tank, and that, I don't know.
Love it.
Maybe don't sit around in track pants all day and maybe brush your hair and for when he comes home. I don't know.
Clean your teeth.
And I actually had some great advice from you and Mike once on a relationships panel a few years back. Paul and I took it on board big time because it was, what's the one thing I can do to show you that I love you or whatever. And we did that for we probably need to bring that back in again, actually. We called it Sewing Sundays, and every Sunday night we'd sit together and be like, hey, what's the one thing? And sometimes they were so practical, like, I just need you to put the bin out. That just, if you could just do that, that'd be so great. Or like, I really, like Paul one time, I didn't even realize I was, not doing it, but he said, I just need you to stop and like hug me back. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize, but I was always in such a rush to get to the next thing that I wouldn't even stop for a moment to let him hug me. And so, I'm going to touch base in there.
So if there was one thing, there was one thing I could do for you this week that would make such a difference, what would that one thing be?
And it can be any time of the day, and it's doable because it's okay. And sometimes I'd have to write it down because, quickly you move on to the next thing. Like, oh, what was that thing, that one thing?
That's right.
There's only one thing and I've forgotten it already.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to come to a close now, but before we do, we just want to let's just talk about God for a minute. Let's just where is God in all of this? Like, where's God been for you in these different seasons? Where's God been for you in the times where it has been a little bit more difficult?
I mean, thankfully he's there in all of it, isn't he? And it's reminding yourself that in the hardest times he is right there. And I think some things that I like practically do at the moment is if we've had just a day it's just a day, we get to the afternoon, a friend of mine introduced me to this. We have praise parties. So my girls love a dance party. So we'll put praise music on in the kitchen and we just dance for a bit, go a little bit crazy. And it reminds me of, where my focus should be, but it also resets them too. We have a bit of fun together. I remember the season that I'm in, but I remember who is ultimately in control. And then also just, praying over them in the evening. And my daughters, like their favourite songs are The Blessing and Praise. And it's because we play them and sing them all the time. And every night my 2-year-old asks me to sing Amen, which is The Blessing. And I've got a video of my 4-year-old, well, she was 2, singing over Zadie as a baby, singing The Blessing, and how that's become a huge song for us as a family and a song I sing every night. And just doing that. And sometimes I'm so tired, I sit there and I'm like, I just want to sit. But then I'm like, no, I need to spend this time in prayer for you. And it just refixes, my focus. And then I end up in repentance.
Wow.
Lord,
this is a deep time.
It is.
Kids laying hands on you.
Because then you go back into, your day. Like, I've got a moment here to sit down and be like, wow, I lost my cool today. And just, praying for her. And then, oh, Lord, please help me be a better parent and, give me more patience tomorrow and things. But taking the moments of actually being still and bringing God into that moment rather than just sort of moving on to the next thing, because the list never ends.
Yeah. Great.
True.
You bet.
I think one of the biggest things I had to come to realise, again, I think it was a Mike advice. It was, Steve and I found it really difficult when we had the kids because we just felt like we had no time for God and we couldn't find that time where we could connect with him like we used to. Before kids, you get to sit down in the morning, you might even have an hour where you're just like, and the angels are singing and everything's just so wonderful and you have this time deep in the Word and then you have children and it's like, oh my goodness, I don't have time to have a shower and, brush my own teeth.
Go to the toilet by myself.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think one of the things that Mike said to us was God was not surprised that you had children. And he gave us really good advice. He said, if the well you once drank from, if you can't drink from there anymore, then you just got to dig another well. And it was that moment of realising, exactly what you said, I'm bringing God into every pit. So if I haven't had time to sit down and have a proper sit down, meet with him in the morning, well, then I'm just going to put worship music on as I'm being busy and doing all the things that I need to do. I'm going to pray in the shower. I'm going to, I'm going to audio Bible in the car. I just need to dig some other wells that are working. And the realization, I think, as well, is, again, I bring it back to that verse in Ecclesiastes, the chapter about seasons and realizing that actually this is just a season and it's going to change.
Yeah.
And some of the things that I really hope for in this season will come in another season because that's how God operates. And the realization, understanding, holding on to his plans and his promises and all of those things and holding on to his word, those types of things can actually really get you through some of those times when you feel like you're not, the season is a bit out of whack.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that has been really helpful for me, is just understanding, God's not upset because I can't sit down with my Bible for an hour in the morning because I've got a toddler and a 9-month-old.
Yeah.
He knows that actually, and he's right there with me while I'm doing bath time, and he's he's there in the middle of the night, and he's available. He's just sitting there going, whenever you want to, I'm here. So whenever you've got a minute, just squeeze me in, and I'm good.
And it truly is the most character refining stage
of your whole life.
Your whole life.
I agree, totally. It says in Isaiah 66:13, as a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. This idea that God sees the way he's designed us as mothers to comfort and care is how he then uses to describe how he will be with
beautiful
people.
Yeah.
And I just think that's beautiful. So I think it's in our design. It's the way he's created us, and we've just got to trust him, and we've just got to trust ourselves and lean into him, lean into community, get the help when we need it, not compare ourselves with everybody around us and how, all the super mums are doing it, but just kind of be okay with actually we're doing this as a family. Whether your family looks like a nuclear family or whether it looks like, aunties and uncles and other people, but just doing the journey just as best you can. Yeah. Cool. Hey, girls, thank you so much. Really appreciate your input, your wisdom today. It's been great. We've discussed a lot, and our prayer is that there would be something in there for parents today, for mums today, and thank you for listening. Awesome.